So here I'd like to go over my ultimate build guide for Invocator in Throne and Liberty. This is accompanied by a build document which you can read through all of the different sections, and it goes through everything you need to know from armor, accessories, runes, artifacts, skills, rotations, both for single target, beating up a boss, and multi-target, beating up groups of enemies. Now I started playing Invocator a few months back when Talandre was released. And I've since been improving my rotation skills, figuring out what works the best to output the most amount of damage. And getting a ton of contribution in bosses definitely leads me to believe that this is, if not the best, one of the best weapon combinations you can use for maximum PvE damage output. However, it's not just that. The new Masteries have brought a ton of flexibility, and you can get some insane levels of defense along with near infinite self-sustain via healing. And quite frankly, it's the class that can do everything. You're not going to have any trouble whatsoever doing solo dungeons on max difficulty, filling the role as both healer and tank in any of these dungeons, and ultimately easily outputting more damage than anybody else. So let's get started. Again, a link to this document's in the video description below, and I will also have my quest log, which does show some variations along with different steps you can take in order to progress throughout the build. The first thing you can see here is my current setup with my gear and all the stats I achieve while buffed up. But the next page goes over the min-max gear, what I would strive to obtain if price wasn't an issue. This is also what's displayed in quest log here at step 4. And yes, a bunch of these items are not accessible. You will not be getting them if you're on a budget. My usual standpoint is you should not spend more than 1,000 lucent on any one gear piece. Simply wait for prices to go down and these items we can get eventually. Currently, my build is very similar to step 3. You can see the current build right here. I've still yet to upgrade, say, my necklace. The runed band of the Black Anvil has since become far more accessible, dropping now in the material transmutation, so that is a ring I would recommend, particularly on newer builds. I started out with the Band of Ancestors' Blood just because it was more accessible and has that added attack speed. I explain in the document just down here the reason why you may want to prioritize attack speed over, say, the heavy attack you would get through the Band of the Black Anvil. And it boils down to how much total heavy attack you actually have and whether or not you have heavy attack chaos runes and heavy attack artifacts. In terms of the actual weapons you're using, yes, the Delaznoa staff has the potential to output far more damage than the Renaissance Foci staff. However, the boss needs to be big. The hitbox needs to be big enough that the meteors from the Delaznoa staff are actually hitting the boss. And yes, some of these bosses are big enough for that, particularly Giant Cordy, but others are just not. And also in terms of a budget level, just go with the Foci staff. As for the wand, I would also just go with the Codex of Deep Secrets. Again, got the species damage, it's got the specs for the magic circle, along with the damage boost. But yes, if you want to min-max, you would ultimately be trying to get the Tevent's wand. There is the Deckman's wand. It's good, but only in multi-target. It's slightly worse than the Codex in single target. In terms of armor pieces, you can use a few alternatives. Like I show here, the Transcendent set is an option. You would go with everything except the boots, which you'd get these for the attack speed. However, the catch on this is you have to play at least 20 meters away from your target in order for it to beat the Spectral and Sacred combo. There is also the option to go with, say, the Void Stalker set instead of the Sacred set to ultimately give you that maximum damage. However, that is only good for like Gate of Infinity builds, where you're trying to beat the Gate of Infinity in 1 second, and then the only real damage that matters is what's done with your Hellfire Rain and some buff abilities. The Sacred set will contribute to more overall damage because of your wand skills with the damage over time, the curses, and that curse explosion. There is a bit of flexibility also with which pieces you use as spectral and which you use as sacred. Like you might see some people using the spectral boots. I have looked at that and it ultimately ends up a little bit worse than the combination I have, which end up giving you the most amount of dexterity and the most amount of wisdom, which results in more max damage and thus overall more damage gain, even if you lose a little bit of heavy attack that you otherwise could have gained through the spectral boots. That's the same with the arm pieces. These transcendent ones are usually a bit better than the scales gloves of resistance. I also had a look at the Delos Noah cloak. Turns out it's not actually that good because the sheer amount of skill damage boost we already gain. You cast your abilities, you're over 800, you then need to add the effect of time for punishment 2, which is basically another 220, which you're getting through this wand mastery, and it just results in not as effective as the heavy attack and crit you could gain through this cloak. But let's move on to, say, our traits. You can see on my builds that I may not have all of the traits selected, particularly in the initial steps. You will have to max trait everything in order to get the resonance effect, in order to, say, unlock that here. Now, what you choose doesn't overly matter, but I would recommend going with, say, evasion, and you can end up nearly 700 on each of them, and that'll just help against mobs a little bit. As for weapons, you can see the order here. Armor similarly as well, and then also accessories. You're focusing on whatever gives you the most damage first. And yes, be aware that max mana, as I say here with resonance traits, does result in an increase to your overall damage because you have Warrior's Gambit and Power Surge, which both result in more damage the more mana you have. So as per resonance, you will want max mana on everything apart from your weapons, which you will want to go with cooldown speed. In terms of runes, again, I described that here. For your weapons, you want to get that synergy that has dexterity and attack speed. For the runes themselves, you will be going with the skill damage boost as the attack rune, max mana as a defense rune, and then mana cost efficiency as the support rune. However, if you have some good chaos runes, you want to put like heavy attack chance there instead. You can also put crit chance if you don't have heavy attack chance. For your belt, your necklace, and also your bracelet, it's simply boss magic heavy attack. You won't take a synergy, you just put all 3 offense slots there. As for your 2 rings then, for offense, again it's boss magic heavy attack, defense, max mana, and then support, it's going to be healing received here, unless again you have a useful chaos rune like I do, crit chance, but ideally we would have heavy attack, which I don't currently have. Just be aware again, all of these things can be changed depending on the content you're running. If you're feeling squishy, a very simple change on your bracelet and your belt is to change all of these slots, and when it's support, you can put skill damage resistance. Having a load of these runes and stacking up that skill damage resistance will give you a ton of extra survivability, and you won't get one shot. We're currently on the squishy end of things. If I'm running into high level trials, I will need to switch a bunch of things to get more max health, to get more skill damage resistance, and make sure to get that trait upgraded. And runes are one of the easiest things to be able to just switch to give you a ton of survivability. We then look at artifacts, and you will simply want to set up with all 4 of the Chaos Harbinger Tally Stones. You will also want the Plains Ravager Solar Stone, and your Lunar Stone will change a little bit. In most fights, you will use the Abyssal Beast Lunar Stone. However, if it's a short field boss fight, you can switch to the Ancestral's Armor Lunar Stone. However, you'll have to do like I do here before going into Dagon. Hurt yourself, take fall damage, and before the boss appears, make sure you're under like 30% health. With this, you then gain that 15% extra base damage. and I usually combine it with the Lady Knight Guardian. That way you still have a ton of hit points, and if you fail to Q block or jump, then you won't say instantly die. You can actually still take a hit. It only lasts for 30 seconds though, but usually these fights are over pretty quick. And as for the traits on those artifacts, you will be looking for heavy attack on your Tally Stone 1, along with max damage. You can see that here in quest log, the different traits I've gone for here. On your Tally Stone 4, you can also get that heavy attack and then also get the crit hit chance. And on your Tally Stone 3, you can get that max mana, the mana regen, and max stamina. Now on your Solar Stone, it doesn't show in quest log, but whenever you obtain these, they can give a bonus damage to a species type. Like this one would be bonus damage to constructs. So you could go get a ton of those and fish for the ones that would give you the maximum damage boost against a certain enemy type. So when you're going into that field boss, you will switch to using the damage boost of that species. You can always see the species of the monster you're going to face in their description. It's the icon next to their name, and it will usually say it next to it. So these three are Wilkin and Pakalo's humanoid, Queen Belandir demon, etc, etc. Other than that, you can just get like evasion and damage resistance on your other artifacts. It doesn't really matter. Personally, I don't like the artifact management system right now, and I am a bit too lazy to bother go and sort through everything. So I just haven't really. I've got some heavy attack here, and you also want to make sure that this Tally Stone 4 has got max damage on it. Other ones you can get have hit points. This is also a switch you can do when you need more hit points. And then your Tally Stone 1, make sure that has base damage. You can do that at the very least. I could be using this one for a bit more heavy attack. But again, I got thousands of those artifact chests that I should technically sort through. I just have not bothered. I'm hoping they'll come out with an update to the system like they did with the rune book. But now we move on to skills. First of all, we have our single target setup, again for killing bosses. This is usually what I use. However, once against a field boss and you don't need inner peace, I use Inferno Wave. Just be aware of alternative skills that you can use, like Detonator Bombardment can be good, Ice Spear Bombardment to trigger Mana Ball a bit more. I've gone and tested pretty much all of them, and just found they're not as good as what I'm already using. Some are, but require more specialization points than are worth investing into them. If you want to min-max a little bit, you can use Detonator Bombardment combined with Inferno Wave, giving up Lightning Judgment and Inner Peace, but it will eat away those burning stacks, and you risk losing damage through that damage over time, and Abyssal Burst and Curse Explosion. If it's nighttime, you can min-max by not using, say, Light of Devotion, this weapon mastery, and use Malice Focus instead, and thus make use of Full of Corruption. And I would switch it like this, so instead of using Wraith's Beacon. But that's only at nighttime. And you can read through the other notes here, with mana, using Inner Peace. Just do note, you don't have to sit there channel the whole thing. You can jump, cancel it, and then you still gain that mana cost efficiency for that duration. You can see my rotation here, and this is my starting combo. As soon as the fight begins, you use those buff abilities, use your curse, and then your Hellfire Rain. You can use your curse again and your Fireball, and this is the set you want to follow to min-max that damage. After you've done this starting rotation, you pretty much use whatever's off cooldown. However, you generally want to try and combine like your Fire Bombs, Touch of Despair, and Decaying Touch before you use Curse Explosion to maximize its damage by reapplying all those dots before it. And then Hellfire Rain, which is your highest damage ability, you ideally want to have your damage buffs before you cast it, which is like your Enchanting Time, High Focus, and Valorous Barrier. But don't wait 10 seconds before casting Hellfire Rain even when it's available just because you're waiting on, say, High Focus. High Focus has a longer cooldown, and so you won't always have it active when you're going to cast Hellfire Rain. Just use your own judgment on that. The skill specializations are important for those skills to actually do what they need to do, but again, there is a little flexibility with them. For example, I could min-max my damage a little further by not using this specialization on Decaying Touch and using Corrupted Magic Circle. You can position yourself like this. I have my critical damage from the Spectral set by not being within 5 meters of an enemy, and I can still just about cast my magic circle to hit my enemy. You need to be at this perfect range for that. Otherwise, you're moving in, casting it, and moving out. That way you gain that additional damage over time on top of the Decaying Touch, which you're going to get through Corrupting Hit. Just by attacking your boss a little bit, you can see you easily trigger all of those dots on because of your dual cast staff mastery. This would free me up a bunch of spec points, but ultimately it can be a bit annoying playing with that, and so I generally just go with this. You can read the further notes here. By looking at the masteries then, you can see how I have it set up for order of priority. This should help you guys a ton because you're all going to be at different levels of mastery. This is again for single target, just maximum damage. I have 3 different weapon mastery setups. I'm currently at level 150 on both of these, so we can get to 15 on this priority list, which gets us nearly everything that's important, and then after that it's a few minor boosts. You then also have the option to go for self-sustain. You will change up the masteries a bit, and without these masteries, if you're going with say the damage ones, you won't have any of that extra survivability that I said mentioned at the beginning of the video. You won't have the self-heal, you won't have the extra defense. With these masteries you then do. I can simply switch here, and now all of a sudden we're not using Vampiric Onslaught, which just means our Vampiric Contract will actually heal us. As long as we have ourselves targeted, which you should do anyway via using these buff abilities, just make sure in your settings you have it enabled so that you will use beneficial skills on yourself when you're not, say, targeting somebody else. And I also have this enabled so you can cancel friendly target, and also this enabled so you can't accidentally target allies. It's a toggle, so you need to turn it on and off. So with Vampiric Contract, when you land a curse on your target, any damage you do from there will then heal you for 17% of the damage you deal. It's crazy. You can target an ally, and then when you do your damage like this, you can give them the heal. So you can essentially fill the role as a healer by keeping people alive that way. You switch target, put all that healing on them, get them to full like pretty much instantly when you cast some damage abilities. Then with the staff side of the masteries, you gain a ton of defense through this mana shield. Combine that with when you're at low mana, you gain a ton of mana regen, and this to give you a little bit more max health. And you ultimately become a complete tank. You get so much defense, you can take any amount of damage and then completely out heal that damage too with Vampiric Contract. So just be aware of those 2 different mastery setups and the notes that go with them. You will also want to switch your Full of Corruption passive rather than using Wraith's Beckon, so that you're actually making use of the wand mastery you gain here, Malicious Focus, which will result in more damage than Wraith's Beckon. Now we look at the multi-target setup. These are all the skills. I would change it a little bit, and it's ultimately going to be the skill specializations that allow for the majority of skills to actually be multi-target. And you can see how Touch of Despair can now apply curses to multiple targets. Curse Explosion is now multi-target as well, so anybody caught within the area, you will cause them to explode like this. We use then Corrupted Magic Circle, as then that's multi-target, and with the Codex, it's then an area that will also follow you around like this, applying a curse to anybody you walk through. And you can see the staff specializations too. You make firebombs have that radius, you combine it with this mastery here, and now it's a 5 meter radius. Inferno Wave, you have the chance to cast twice, and this is also a good radius damage. Chaining Bolt, you can now transfer the damage to multiple targets regardless if they're wet or not. Same with Lightning Judgment. Hellfire Range, still pretty good in multi-target with High Focus as your buff ability. and you will use Inner Peace just to get your mana back. There is no strict rotation, as you can read here, but just be aware of your different combos. You want to ideally apply those curses to your target first. So you would say buff up like you would do in single target, then apply those burnings. You might even use your meteor, apply your curses again, get the magic circle up, and once all the dots are up, you would then curse explode them. Now, depending how squishy the enemies are, you might not even use Dark Explosion because they could just die then from that end explosion, and then that's fine, you're removing the dots. But with Dark Explosion, you then don't remove the dots and it can lead you to dealing more damage overall. Just be aware the weapon masteries change a little bit. You need to make sure you're getting the multi-target weapon masteries from staff, like we mentioned with Fire Wave Amplifier. Even Infernal Aftermath is good. Dual cast still very good in multi-target as well, combined with mana shockwave, and having that extra mana regen when your mana is low is also super good. You then have some consumables. You obviously want to have Stellarite. If you go to your field bosses regularly, you'll have so much of this stuff and it's 15%. Otherwise you can buy the normal 10% just with some Solent. You will want your food types for against those different species of enemies. You can see the 4 different ones just here, and you simply use them whenever you're going to go against your field boss. Again, based on what species that enemy is. You'll also want to have an attack remedy for that damage boost for 20 seconds and use it for your starter rotation along with your artifact, which we use down here along with the Lady Knight Guardian. So you have that shield and the cooldown. And that's ultimately it for the build. Unfortunately, I don't believe this actually works and I'm going to remove this. You can't actually copy these codes and then paste them here. It doesn't give the option until you've copied the set. You can then paste it. But if you actually pasted that to a document, then this is what you get. I don't know why they didn't let that happen, but yeah, maybe they didn't want people screwing it up. So I will remove that, and it's unfortunate. You'll just have to copy what I have everything here with regards to the spell specializations, and then check exactly the skills that are listed here. And overall, I hope this build helps. I hope it gives enough detail as well, where I go over different alternatives that you can use. And yes, you may see people using those alternatives and they can work. It can ultimately be tiny bit of a difference in damage. Somebody using Ice Spear Bombardment instead of my Inferno Wave is going to be a tiny bit of a damage difference between them. My Infernal Wave will deal more damage because it has a lower cooldown, but the Ice Spear Bombardment could give more burst damage, if only the damage matters in the first 10 seconds. If you think there's any errors or have any questions, you can leave in the comments below, or you can message me on Discord. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys around.